Do you struggle with finding time to take care of you? There are all these obligations that you have to handle that are more important, right? Um, I don't think so anymore. That's why on today's episode of the Your Money, Your Life podcast, we're talking with Onnie Michalsky about the 5 pillars of self-care, making yourself a priority, and if it's a requirement to wake up early and more. Onnie Michalsky is a licensed therapist and life and wellness coach for busy, stressed out moms who desperately need a break but refuse to take one. She's also a mom of 6 who empowers fellow moms to hang up their superwoman capes and break through the limiting beliefs that are keeping them from becoming their best self. Her mission as the founder of the Moms Without Capes movement is to help women discover and fall in love with who they are under their mom hat so they can design the life they want to be living. So, let's do this. All right, Onnie, thank you so much for being on the Your Money, Your Life podcast. I'm so excited that you are here.
I am so excited to be here, Aimee. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We've had a fun relationship. We've gotten to do quite a bit of collaborations and talks over the last almost 12 months now. And I know this is going to be great.
It's been that long.
Yes. And I am recording. There's a really funny story about that. I might tell all the guests later. But so to start off, I'd love to hear, what does your money, your life mean to you?
So when I know that's the name of the podcast, and when I hear that, I immediately go to thinking that it's not being a slave to your money, that we need money to live, to have fun, to enjoy life. We only get one life, but being able to be responsible with our money and learn how to manage it so that we're not drowning in debt. We're not basically like living paycheck to paycheck or being a slave to our money, that we can use our money to make our life even better. So that's what I think of when I hear your money, your life.
I love it. That's definitely like what I was going for when we named the podcast that. But so tell me a little bit about your journey. You're now like this wellness expert talking about helping moms take care of themselves and self-care. So how did you get to this place?
So it's been a long journey. I have a background in mental health counseling. I'm a licensed counselor here in Montana. And then I kind of stumbled upon becoming a health coach. I wanted to do Zumba, and that I ended up teaching it. And as part of the continuing education credits in order to be a group fitness instructor, when I decided not to do the name Zumba, but I instead went to cardio, dance, like I tried different names, and I decided to become a health coach as part of the continuing education process to keep my certification as the group fitness instructor. Well, I don't even have that group fitness instructor anymore, like that certification. And I've learned that people don't care what kind of certifications you have, as long as you can help them with the transformation. And so along that journey of my own, health journey, or like coming to terms with rediscovering who I am under my mom hat. The most important role I have, I mentioned that I'm a counselor and I'm also a coach. I also am a mom of 6 kids. And so I wanted to create a business that kind of encompassed all of that. Brought my own background, my experience, my education, all with helping other moms. And so I created the brand Moms Without Capes. And now I serve super women, which are the moms that struggle with it, like the mentality of thinking they have to do it all and be it all. And they have like to-do lists that are forever long. And I help them like manage their time and manage, actually putting themselves on their to-do list. Because one of the biggest things is moms say they don't have time. And so I found that it's really not the time management, because we are great schedulers. We know, it's really considering yourself worthy enough to focus on. And so I do a lot of things on like perfectionism and people pleasing and boundary setting and all of those other things that are keeping us from prioritizing ourselves. And so that is just a brief window of how I got to be where I am.
Yes, I definitely agree that you're right. It's not that we don't have time. It's that we're not making the time, making it a priority. Like if we have
Yes.
all these things to do, if I'm going to do the dishes or do something to take care of myself, like we'll end up choosing the dishes instead of even like
Right.
asking for somebody else, like, okay, hey, can you do the dishes so that I can go do this? And I know we've
Yeah.
talked about before, like self-care isn't just bubble baths, and like
Yes.
bubble baths is self-care for me. Like it's something I enjoy. So Monday, funny story. My husband was like, I had a rough day, like with the kids and everything. He was like, okay, when I get home, just give me 2 things off of your list. Like I'm going to take care of them for you. And then he got stuck at work and it was like 7:45 when he got home.
Oh, you had your hopes up. You had your hopes up.
But he was,
such a disappointment.
yeah. And it was like, you know what? I have wanted to take my Epsom salt bath for a while. So instead of like helping me with this, I want you to go shower so that I can go sit and take my bath when we're done.
Right.
Like it was the simple little thing of, if I hadn't been learning to make it a priority and like it's okay like to say yes to myself, I don't know if I would have done that, because it can feel frivolous a little bit like to say that, but it is just as important. And I love that like that's your focus as well. And the other thing that I love is you have pillars of self-care.
Yes.
I think there's 5 of them, if I remember correctly. Okay.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about those?
So because we're so overwhelmed with so many different things to do, I focus mainly on like 5 areas that you can make sure that I say filling your bucket, and making sure that you are focusing on these 5 areas so that you can fill your bucket and that you can feel recharged and get all of the benefits of self-care. And like you mentioned, self-care is not just bubble baths. Of course, it can include bubble baths if that's what you really do need to define self-care for you. And so these 5 pillars or 5 categories are physical, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, and social. And I know you are the money woman. You're the money woman. And so and a lot of when you look at like the dimensions of health or if you were to Google that, finances often come up. And I don't include that in any of those 5 pillars. I include them in all of them because money is such a part of your life, right? And so I don't think that it needs a separate category. I think it infiltrates every single one of those pillars. And we can get into that in a little bit, but these 5 pillars all encompass different areas. So like physical is kind of what we always think of when we think of self-care, like taking care of your body, making sure that you're getting enough sleep and the healthy diet and moving your body every day. The emotional is, I combine that with the mental health. And because your feelings and your thoughts and your mental health is all intermingled or intertwined. And so making sure that you are taking care of your mental and emotional health. And this could include therapy, journaling, a lot of self-reflection, making sure that you are tuning into what you're thinking and all of that good stuff. And then your spiritual health is not just religion, but it's also like just getting in touch with the wider world, making sure that you're getting out in nature and connecting with the bigger world. And then you've got the intellectual, and that's like mental stimulation, challenging yourself, learning new skills or learning new, bringing new knowledge into your life each day. And then finally, the social, and that is all about relationships and making sure that you're fostering and investing in your relationships in your life. And so those are the 5 areas that, especially if you are new to self-care, will help you make sure that you're getting something each day.
I love it. And it's funny. I was in one of your challenges. I think it was over the summer. And it was the first time like I met somebody who had the same like game that we play like on our phones. And it's the whole intellectual thing. It's Killer Sudoku. But I had never met anybody else that played it before until we did that. And I was like, this is what I did today. And they were like, oh my gosh, I love that one too. So it was was social too, and the intellectual there.
That's the thing. A lot of them cross over, definitely. And that's why that financial, like that crosses right, that goes right in there. You can't, this is a podcast, but I'm like moving my fingers in and out like a wave, like it's intertwined. Like it's the Italian in me talking with my hands.
So you got to watch the YouTube, guys. If you're listening to the podcast, come watch the YouTube video so you can see us talking.
My hands. See what I'm actually talking about. But they're all intertwined, and you can certainly engage in one self-care practice that pulls in from the different pillars. They're not all separate.
Yes. And I can definitely see from the financial standpoint, as we talk about like our mindset and our habits, at the time of this, when this goes live, we'll be in the middle of the Healthy, Happy Impulse Spending Challenge. It might have a different name by this point because I'm still not set on it, but we're talking about healthy impulse spending habits, and the whole thought process that all impulse spending is bad, like of course is wrong. We're talking about that, but knowing like what our triggers are and what happens and what we do in relation to that, I see how that intertwines in all of these different pillars as we talk about our self-care as well. So I love how you say like it's in all of them, because it is. And that's really why it's so important that we create money as a tool. It's not just like, let's figure this out because like we need to have money. It's because we want to be the best version of ourselves too. And when we take care of ourselves and we take care of our finances, you're just happier when we do that. And yeah, I'm gonna get off.
Aren't we meant to be happy? Aren't we meant to be happy?
Yes,
we are meant to live this amazing life. And so it all plays a role. A big role.
I was on a group coaching call a couple weeks ago, and they were like, "You just look happy," and I was like, "You know what? Thank you. Like that is like one of the biggest compliments." I was talking about like all of the crazy things that have occurred over the last like a month, because it's just been like a roller coaster of all these things. And even though I'm talking about like all these things that went wrong, they were just like, "You look happy." And I was like, "You know what? Thank you." Because a couple of years ago when I wasn't making myself a priority and I hadn't worked on my mindset, like I don't think you would have been able to, I know you wouldn't have been able to say that. Yes.
Right.
And it makes all the difference. So
it does.
Is there a question that I haven't asked you that everyone needs to know the answer to?
So what is my favorite self-care practice? Because we talked about how you have to define it for yourself. And this is something that is very controversial in mom world. I guess maybe in everything, but waking up early. I do wake up early. And I know a lot of moms will say like, that their self-care is sleeping in. And exactly.
I raised my hand for those of you who are listening.
It's kind of like staying at home or like going to work. Like, it's just like, there's some moms that fall on one side and the other moms are like adamant, like, no, I'm not waking up early to get in my self-care. And I have found over the years that just works for me. And getting up early allows me to get myself mentally and physically prepared for the day, because my day is totally like chaos. As many systems I have in place, and like, I've got the chore list, and I've got, making, like I already made dinner for tonight, like different things that I do throughout the day to bring peace to that case. I know if I didn't do that, it would be over my head and I would be crying every day. And so being able to wake up early is my self-care. And during that time, I don't do work. I make sure that I'm mentally prepared, not physically. I am not doing laundry. I'm not emptying the dishwasher. I'm not doing anything like that. That's the time that I'm sitting there journaling. I have 5 minutes where I actually just think, because I don't have time to think during the day. Many of you moms probably know this. Like you don't know what you're thinking, which is why many of us struggle with sleep, because you lay down to go to sleep and all these thoughts are flooding your mind, all these worries and stuff, because you don't give yourself that time to actually think. And so that's my favorite. But I really do challenge all of the listeners to define what self-care is for you. What fills your bucket, what brings you that peace and recharges you so that you are your best version, that you're moving toward your best version.
And see, this is why I love asking this question, because like we needed to hear that. And it is funny because for myself, like I am a night owl by nature, and that's like that's always been my nature, but everyone talks, or a lot of
You hear
experts
it,
in the
yes.
industry talk about like, you got to get up early. You got to get up early. I've got like kids that are still crawling in bed with me. She's 3, but like,
Yes.
it's still every night, like in bed with me. And when I made the decision, I was stressing myself out trying to get up
Mhm.
earlier. And what I did was I just stopped setting an alarm. I mean, my kids are going to wake me up. I'm not going to sleep for forever, but there were times that I was sleeping late. I mean, it was 8:45 or so.
Mhm.
And like, I know for morning people, like they have their day done, but
I
was,
love telling people that too. I gotta admit, like my husband, he's a late sleeper. And I'm like, God, I'm halfway done my day. Like, where have you been?
but the simple act of stopping setting the alarm, like I released so much stress.
Pressure.
Yes. And the pressure, and like I got more done because I wasn't stressed about the fact that I
Right.
was, quote, behind because I wasn't getting up early.
You were no longer comparing and
Yes.
trying
And
to keep up.
yes. And it was the craziest thing. And like, my work day, I always started like at 10 a.m. anyways. Like even when I was trying to get up earlier, I didn't want to commit to anything earlier than that because, life happens. But I was still keeping with that. I got done what I needed to faster because we had done everything. So I just love how it's like the polar, the opposites,
The
but it's
opposite.
definitely how we all fill our own bucket.
Yes. Do you follow Jenna Kutcher?
You were the one that told me that she's not a morning person.
She's
And I was
not,
just
yeah.
like,
She always said because I'm like, she's making millions.
you were the first one. And like, she was the first one I heard of. And it was
Yeah,
just
she
like,
always talks about it.
oh
Like,
my gosh. They
it's totally
exist.
possible. It is because you're right. We hear so much about like, you have to wake up early, like to be successful. And
Yep.
it's like ground in our heads, like, oh my gosh. And then when you can't wake up early or you don't want to wake up early,
Mhm.
you're already like feeling behind. Like you said, like you're already feeling like you're not measuring up. And
Yes.
we don't need that.
Nope. So the takeaway here is it's about what you need. So
Yes.
we've got the two extremes here. You identify with one of us. So I'm big on tools and systems and using them to make things easier so we can really be the CEO of our life. So what is the most valuable tool or resource that you found when it comes to self-care and taking care of yourself?
So this is really funny because right before you hit record, we were talking about our calendars. And when you sent me the questions in preparation for this episode, I was like, what is my phone? I know you asked me that before. And I think I said my crock pot.
Yes.
Because it does help me get more done. But I was like, I'm like, it is definitely my calendar. And that's what we were talking about right before you hit record, is kind of getting the calendar straight and like using electronic versus paper and all that. So I use my paper calendar and I use a passion planner, and it really helps me like with time blocking and making sure that, and how it helps me with self-care is that I actually write down, like I make sure that I'm putting breaks in the day to go for a walk around the block or go to the gym or to go up. I started doing a lunchtime because I work at home. My kids are all at school during the day. And so I really don't need to break and go for lunch, but I do like a 30-minute, sometimes a 20-minute, but just giving myself that time to get up, and it's intentional. And that's the thing. You need to be intentional about self-care, because if you're not, it doesn't happen, especially if you're not used to doing it, because you're in these habits and routines of putting everyone else and everyone else's needs in front of you. And so you have to start being intentional about your own self-care and saying, well, what fills my bucket? And then creating that space in your calendar and in your day to practice it.
Yep. Totally agree. And I was wondering if you were going to say the crock pot again,
Yeah.
because I feel like I plan a crock pot meal at least once a week now, because like since we had that talk on the summit. But I love that. And we were saying before we hit record, like I have time scheduled. I've got like a little reminder. It's a 1-minute appointment that says like start with a red heart, like at 5:00 to remind me like to stop working, especially those of us who have the home businesses and we work from home and you're passionate about what you do. It's so easy, like just to keep working. It's not, we have to be more intentional about separating business and work and taking care of ourselves. So
and since you're all about money, I want to tell you something that I got my new planner for 2022, and I already went through, and at least the first 3 months, I went through and I marked off time towards the end of each month to do like a monthly review and to work, like to put in my finance, my business financials into the spreadsheet, because that does,
Dang.
it goes, every month I keep putting it off. And then it's like 3 months later and I'm like, oh my gosh, let me go back 3 months and like pull up my bank statements and all of that. But I'm like, if it's in my calendar, then it will get done. So I did on a Friday, once a month, or towards the end, I actually wrote it down that that's what I'm going to focus on that Friday. So just wanted to let you know that I am intentional about my finances, or I'm planning to be.
I love it. And it's so key because I get asked this every time we're on tax time. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's this overwhelming thing. And we really have to just build it in. So the one thing that you probably want to do before we get to that point is make a list of the things that you need to do, because we'll sit down and look at it and be like, oh my gosh, like, I don't even know where to start. But if you have it listed out, like, okay, I need to check my expenses, I need to check my income, I need to check these things, then it's that simple. Like, we don't sit there trying to figure out what we need to do.
Yeah,
when the time
spend
happens.
all your time trying to figure out that instead of actually being productive and doing what it is. Yes.
So this has been awesome. I believe you have a free gift for our listeners. So what is that? And tell us a little bit about it and where our listeners can find it.
I do. So I have a guide for getting over the excuses that you may be making when it comes to self-care. And this is, that self-care is selfish, or that big excuse that we just talked about is that I don't have time, or the house is going to fall apart. And this guide will walk you through what thinking errors might be coming up that's causing you to, or keeping you from practicing self-care. So I do have that for all of your listeners.
Okay.
And it's at momswithoutcapes.com. And I forgot to ask you this before we hit record. Do you want it to say your money or Aimee?
Your money works.
Okay. So momswithoutcapes.com/your money.
That
so
works.
You can grab that guide.
And of course, we'll make sure it's in the show notes as well, so you don't have to try and remember that. But if you're awesome and went on the go, you can go grab that. And I love the thinking errors. Like, that's a fun way to word that. And then, of course, where can our listeners find you online and learn more about you?
So I know you're all about Instagram, and I'm on Instagram too, but not as much as you. I'm more a Facebook girl. So I can be found on Facebook at Moms Without Capes, also on Instagram at Moms Without Capes. Also have a free Facebook community, Moms Without Capes, of course, and that's where I can be found.
Awesome. Making it easy. Moms Without Capes. I'm in that Facebook group. It is awesome. So you should definitely check that out. And I like to leave you with a challenge. So you can message Onnie on Facebook, or you can message me on Instagram. Your challenge today is, I want to hear what are you going to do to make yourself a priority? What action are you going to take when it comes to self-care? Now that we've worked on making ourselves a priority, we're going to go do it, but make sure you let me know what you're going to be doing, and we'll see you next week for another episode of the Your Money, Your Life podcast. Bye for now, guys.